What if we could create the billboard of spoken word ideas? Welcome back to another episode of Building Audea, the series where I talk about how I'm trying to build my first technology startup, which is called Audea, and all the ideas and thoughts I have on trying to build it. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Audea is an audio-based native distribution platform, and we're trying to kind of become the YouTube of audio, if I had to describe it in the most simplest of terms. One of the things I've really been thinking about is this concept of ranking ideas over each other. The concept around marketing your ideas as your songs was, if you have a unique original idea that you communicate through spoken word for like 4 to 5 to like 10 to 15 minutes, is there a way for that to become a single for when you release it to the world? Is there a way for you to brand that idea in a way that gets people to consume it almost as if an artist released a new single or song, and the ability for them to consume that type of content? Now, central to the music industry is this idea of competition and ranking songs over each other. And people really like that, right? Like, that's not really that frowned upon. The Billboard Hot 100, so Billboard is this organization that basically collectively evaluates and creates the metrics to determine which songs are being listened to the most and are being bought the most or being streamed the most, all that type of stuff. So if you land a #1 record on the Hot 100 Billboard charts, you have a song that probably the entire world is listening to, which is a really, beautiful thing. Like, to have a song that's #1 on the billboards means that everyone in the world is listening to that song. It kind of cements your legacy in music if you're able to do that. And some people are one-hit wonders. They get one song and they never get back there. But for some of the greats like Michael Jackson, Drake, Whitney Houston, Justin Bieber, because he has a bunch of #1s. I'll put them up there. Ariana Grande. I know there's so many people I'm not naming, but there's so many artists that have really cemented their legacy in music and have made a career that will stand the test of time, that music will live beyond their physical lives. Now, the question is, could that be replicated for spoken word communicators? When we think of spoken word communication and we think of thought leadership, I think we think of people who have ideas that they communicate through spoken word, or they communicate like through a book and then they talk about that book. So if I write a book about life and I have 10 chapters and I go on a speaking tour and I talk about each of those chapters, that tour of me speaking about those chapters is the spoken word version of my book. But I'm first and foremost an author before I am a speaker, right? Like, because that book is an accepted medium of communication that we've sort of branded over time as this thing that lives forever. And there's charts that ranks books. I mean, the #1 is like the New York Times bestsellers, but books kind of play a role throughout the course of humanity, just like music does. And we have documented systems that allow us to recognize which books and which songs at certain points of time were better than everything else. As someone who is primarily communicating through spoken word content, and as someone who's trying to get my ideas to be marketed as my songs, I was thinking, what if we create Billboard for spoken word ideas? Now, this is a very difficult thing to do. It is something that I'm working on. I'm just putting it out there, and hopefully this will become actualized once the company is up and running and we actually have some money to spend on this stuff. But ranking has always worked when it comes to competition for humans. Like, people being ahead of other people is something that has always intrinsically motivated other people. And it's just like, that's objectively true. I don't think you're playing on like manipulation when you're saying that. I think being ahead of someone else is the system and the thing that we like to reward in a society. And the competition to get in front of someone else is always a fun and enjoyable process to watch. It pushes you to your creative limits. It's the reason why sports are as big as they are. The ability to say, okay, I have a 5-minute idea on life, right? I released an entire speaking album, put that in the description as well. One of the talks was called "When It's Time to Go, It's Time to Go." So that's an idea. If I could sing, if I had any hint of musical talent, I would take the core concept of that talk and I would put it into a song, and it would flow rhythmically, and there would be lyrics and there would be music and all that stuff. I can't do that. That's not the type of person I am. That's not the type of person most people are, because most people aren't musically talented. But everyone can speak it out. Now, not everyone's going to be amazing at communicating it, but there are going to be a lot more people, I think, than the music industry that are able to articulate themselves, because everyone is used to speaking, and you can learn how to speak. You can learn how to construct a message. You can learn how to make an argument. Whereas with music, like, if you just don't have the talent, you're not going to succeed. Now, what if there was a system in which people uploaded their talks, their spoken word ideas, I'll call them Audeas because that's the name of our company, and there was a native distribution platform to facilitate the ability for people to recognize those spoken word ideas. It gave them the ability to become discovered. That's what we're trying to build from a tech standpoint. From a branding standpoint, what if there was the ability for a system, like a non-biased, objective third-party system, which is what I think Billboard is. Like it just counts numbers, right? It doesn't really care if you're Justin Bieber. It just counts, did Justin Bieber get these amount of numbers to put him ahead of whoever else was under him. If there was a system that existed to rank those ideas over each other, could we create an entire new industry around spoken word content? The closest thing we have to this right now are podcast charts on Apple and Spotify. But, you know, those are just podcast charts. Those are like, if Joe Rogan's being streamed the most, he's going to show up on #1 on the charts. And that's cool. But those aren't spoken word ideas. Like spoken word and they are like, they're just long 2-3 hour versions of it. I'm talking about, I guess like TED Talks would be my best example, or like little poetry clips, like a 2-minute, the dust in the winter. That's the title of my 2-minute poem, you know, or why going to the park is a horrible thing on Sunday afternoons. That's my 5-minute comedy clip, right? Like these titles that describe a clip of comedy or a clip of poetry or an original idea where it's spreading through a TED-like format. All of these things just exist, and I don't think there's a system to rank them over each other. Like there's not the Billboard of comedy clips. And when I mean clips, I just mean like comedy ideas, right? Spoken word ideas. There's not the Billboard of poetry clips. There's not the Billboard of TED Talks. What if there was? I'm just saying, like, I don't know how this would happen. I'm trying to like understand this idea more. But if there was a ranking system in which people could submit their ideas, and based upon the number of streams and views it got, and if Audea becomes the platform to distribute it, then we would already have the technology ready to count these types of things, right? To quantify them, which would make it easier to rank them. Then I think it would have a chance of success because more people are going to try to get to the top of the charts, because that's how competition is. And if all these people are already creating this type of spoken word content, and there's a bunch of poets out there, there's a bunch of comics out there, for example, they all already put out clips on the daily, right, of their poetry and of their comedy. They just like exist on YouTube or IGTV or something like that. If they could put them into a platform, or in general just distribute that clip, but that clip is now counted as a single that exists on a chart, just like a music song is going everywhere. It's YouTube, Spotify, it goes everywhere. But you kind of register it with the Billboard industry, I think, as a official single, and you put it out there, and that's what allows Billboard to rank how the single is doing through all different platforms in terms of being consumed. What if you replicated that exact same thing for comics, exact same thing for poets, exact same thing for TED Talkers? And those are 3 niches I'm thinking right now. Or you just get rid of all that and you make it one niche and just spoken word ideas, and like you submit it and then Billboard tracks how it is. Maybe the funny ones are at the top, maybe the deep ones are at the top. I don't know what it looks like, but I do think that the idea of that already has potential to succeed, because people will want to get to the top, and people who aren't musically talented will want to be able to say that they have the #1 comedy clip in the world, or the #1 spoken word idea in the world, the #1 motivational speech in the world. I mean, like, there is not a system, if you think about it, to rank these types of things outside of like, you know, number of views on YouTube, like, or trending on YouTube. There's not an actual documented system that will live for the next 1,000 years that will say on January 4th, 2076, you know, Amit had the #1 spoken word idea trending in the world. What if that existed?